every successful person got there by going through tough times. Success is a hard-ass teacher who likes to knock you around along that journey. You know, it takes real guts to not give up and keep going. We'll hear stories about failures and how these leaders flip the script to create success. I'm John Schultz. Join me and let's discover how success is never really overnight. Welcome to the John Schultz podcast. We're very excited to be here today. We have Cydni Tetro, who is going to be an amazing guest, an amazing story. I'm going to start off with a brief introduction. It could go for a while, but I'm going to consolidate it. She's the CEO of Brandless.com, which is an omni-channel e-commerce platform, and a lot more. We're going to talk about that. Obviously, I had to say something. Founder and president of the Women Tech Council. Love that. Utah's 2022 CEO of the Year. That's a big accomplishment. And faculty at the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Initiative. She went to Brigham Young University at BS and MBA in Computer Science and Strategy and Marketing. And you're a board member on the Governor's Economic Council and Select Health. Lots going on. You're busy. So let's get into it. Thanks for being here.
I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I'm excited. So, this is about the myth of overnight success. We all have long histories and track records in what we do. If you've been around for a while, it's even more. So I like to start off like what did you want to be when you grew up? Like, what was your passions when you were younger?
That's a really great question. I love this idea that, the myth of the overnight success, because, life is a journey. It's a very long journey, right? And what you knew when you were young and where you're at now, to be honest, one of the things when I was in elementary school that I totally remember writing a paper about was actually being president of the United States. That was like in the list of things.
Talk about ambitions. Wow. That's like going for it.
That's right, exactly. I was totally going for it. I've since changed my mind. Let's be clear about, how you think about that. But, I think the thing that there were a couple of things I knew. When I was in college, I had no idea what I wanted to be, but I've always known that this journey of learning and skill sets was going to be the thing that unlocked doors. And so that really became this way that I navigated really my entire career, because I constantly feel like, I'm not actually sure what I'm going to do next. I just know that there's these steps forward.
So there's always a next, right? So you had to learn how to be uncertain and be good with that and know that there is something there. I love that. I think that's what sort of blocks most of us, right? Like worrying about what's next instead of just taking little action steps, little micro goals, I call them. All right, so there you go. You want to be president of the United States. That's a pretty big ambition. How would you say your parents would describe you? Because, obviously, you live with them a long time. So what did they think?
I'm the oldest of 8 children. And so my parents would have forever said that, I was, naturally always taken to, how do you lead things? How do you make big things happen? How do you rally groups of people to do that? And I think today, as they look at that, I think they always saw that the potential. I don't think they could have ever imagined that it would have taken me on this journey. They get to come with me to a lot of different things. I always invite my parents. My mom comes to all of those things. And I think the thing that is probably the most important to them and probably most important to me is that I spend time doing things that are helping other people. And, when you build companies, it really is about not just, building a company that does great things, but also all the economic impact that you provide for the people who work for you. And what those platforms give you and this responsibility that you have to keep helping people move forward and the world be better than it was when you started. And I think that's the thing that they would value the most about the journey.
I love that. So I love I'm dating myself, but I loved the Brady Bunch when I was a kid. There were 6, you had 8. And you're the oldest. It's almost like a startup, right? Like, it's like you'd have a lot of people to do a lot of things. So, but being the oldest, because I happen to be the oldest, but I only have one brother. So that was sort of easier to manage. What responsibilities did you feel being the oldest? And how do you think that did prepare you? Not for today, because like we said, that's a long journey, but to go through the motions of what you wanted to do, be, and add value.
For sure. There's no doubt when you come from a large family and you're in that oldest seat that you take on a fair amount of responsibility, right? You just naturally are put into those situations where you're taking care of other people. There's this conflict management that's always happening in families, right? That you're learning to navigate. I think you gain empathy because you sit in this seat, unlike some of my younger siblings, where you saw the journey and the trials of everyone. And you
Yep.
had this unique perspective of the impact it had, not just on individuals, but the family and how those dynamics evolve, and then how you still build great relationships that can stand the test of time, even through the ups and downs that life surely gives you. And I think a lot of that comes from that perspective that I had of not just a large family, but everyone's a unique personality. They have different journeys. And how do you still, be great people, build great relationships, and learn from all the things that happen?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I had one brother. It's a little easier. I mean, you have different personalities you'd had to deal with, and you
Yep.
couldn't run away. There was no outdoor, right? You had to stay there and deal with it, which I think is terrific. All right, so here you are, getting ready to start your career. We'll go to there, and one of your first jobs was a software tester. First of all, why technology? I mean, I know you did that in school, but a lot of people do a lot of things in school and do the opposite. What got you so into tech and wanting to pursue that?
I had very, very good mentors when I was in junior high and high school. So I was naturally really good at math and computation. And a whole series of people saw that in me. And they saw the correlation of what that could mean in the technology discipline. And they truly opened doors for me in those very early days where they saw that I had the skill. And what I learned as I was going through my degree, so I came through computer science. I did not really want to be a programmer, right? Like, of all the things that I aspired to be, even when I was like coding an operating system and doing databases and all of those, I'm like, just don't know if I can like just be a programmer in what my aspirations were. But I knew that the technical skill that I was gaining was going to open a series of doors I couldn't predict. And the foundation of that skill was just going to do something that would unlock potential. I remember sitting in between my like second and third year, and I was like, can I finish this degree? Like, what is, can I go through this? I was like one of three women in my graduating class, and I did my minor in dance. And so I had the opposite thing in those classes, right? So I had these two extreme worlds.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, can I do this? And the people around me and the people I talked to, they said the same thing. They're like, Sid, you're getting this education. You want to walk away from the education with all the learning that sets you up for whatever you want to do in the future. And those technical skills, and this was really in early days of tech, not today where everything's tech. So that was very, I would say, forward thinking for a lot of those people to be able to say, this is going to open doors. I know you don't know what they look like now, but you sacrificed a lot to be here. You're in the midst of this program. You should finish it. And, you don't have to listen to that advice, but for me, I decided to. And it's really been true that the sacrifices I made to finish my education, and that even though I didn't know exactly what I was going to be, led to a crazy amount of opportunities. And while I never really chose the path of programming, I always chose a path of product innovation. I've spent my entire career building things, and I build really good things because I know how stuff works. I know the trade-offs you make. I know how to make, I know what the code's going to do. I know how to build architecture. I know how to make trade-offs. I know agile software development. I know I've been a scrum master. I've done all of those things. And so while I didn't sit in the coding role, I know how to build innovation. And that has really been the key to my career.
I think that is so key. I had this example on another podcast. Like, a lot of my friends that are really successful restaurateurs, they started out washing the dishes. Like, you had to learn like why and when things happened and how to sort of understand how to do them yourself. And you can't do that for everything, but I feel it gives you confidence. And I also believe, you did it way back when, but to have that experience in today's world, I always say, like, be a minor in it. So at least you can come out of college and get a job. I mean, everything is tech now. It's not even tech, it's innovation, right? So you did it at a very early time, and obviously it served you well. You went from, tester to CEO, and we love that. And so you're in Utah, and now they call it the Silicon Slopes, which it wasn't back then. when you're in high school. So obviously, the change is just in your area. How has that helped you? Because you're still there, right? I mean, tech's really usually thought of in a whole different area in Silicon Valley. How did that go, and what made you stay?
Well, two great questions. Today across Silicon Slopes, we have like 7,500 technology companies, and we've really created this mass infrastructure. It did not look like this 20 years ago, right?
Right.
20 years ago, we didn't have capital. We didn't have companies that were billion-dollar companies. We didn't even have an ecosystem where you really had people developing careers into management and executive because the companies weren't that big, right? It was like startup and a couple of big giants. And so you didn't even have the necessary ecosystem to develop the talent to the level that you needed. There are a couple of things that have always, when I think about career and life, because I think they're very intertwined. You make decisions in career based on priorities of the things that you care about. And for me, one of my strong priorities has always been how I blend family and career. And that has been a driver for me. And I have intentionally made decisions along my career path where I probably sacrificed a position or income because my family was more important. And I've been okay with that. Like I made that sacrifice and it was very intentional. And so for me, being in a place where I felt like I could, raise my children, I could have that family life balance. I found that here, even when I worked at Disney, I actually was based in Salt Lake City and I did the commute between Glendale and Orlando all of the time. But it was the right thing for me. And so I've just became really aware early in my career that I was going to have to make trade-offs. I was going to make sacrifices for the things that were important to me. And I felt like I could successfully blend a journey that I wanted, but I wasn't willing to sacrifice the order of the priority for me. I always wanted to be okay and be in environments where I could take the phone call from the soccer field. I could show up at the dance competition. I could still I've spent my entire career building a career and also being like the manager of the soccer team and like volunteering in the school. Like those were important to me. And so I did that by building a career here. And today everyone can do it. And as you pointed out, 20 years ago, it didn't look like that. I think that also created a responsibility for me to help build a stronger ecosystem in Silicon Slopes, which is where I've also spent some of my time. How do you build a community around this? How do you evolve the tech ecosystem? How do you add more capital? How do you build talent? And I've spent a fair amount of my time in my career doing that. So it paves the way for the other people to come.
I love how you use sacrifice as a positive word. I always say also like failure, it's a positive word. Like we get through what we get through. That's what makes us confident, strong. But sacrifice, when people think sacrifice, they're thinking, oh, I'm doing something that I don't want to do. It's the opposite. You sacrifice for what you wanted to do on both sides, both personal and business. Love that. It's a new way people should look at it. Hopefully, and I know people are going to like that when they listen to this. All right, so you're here. You are. You have some big breaks, right? One of your first big breaks was you joined an executive team that raised $58 million. First of all, how did that opportunity come about? It's a lot of money, right? So give a little background of that.
Yeah, so this was right in the midst of like the dot-com bubble that was coming, which was really interesting time in tech. And I came from a large company, but I had this really unique opportunity to build leading innovation and actually play on this really world stage of largest competitors in the world. So the product I was building, Microsoft was the competition. Wow. And so I got this really, really great experience. But what started to happen, and I didn't really have the perspective of startup land or starting companies really before this, because there's these passive, you're going to go to a company, that's where you work. And then all of a sudden, as the tech ecosystem was expanding, I saw all of my colleagues jumping into startups. And it triggered something for me of this opportunity where there was a different risk profile that I could jump into that could create more learning, that could push the opportunity, could drive more innovation. And so I got connected through Next Page with a couple of those friends and I jumped over to that team. And it was a really, really great move.
Where did you come from that? Where did you come from when you jumped?
So I was working at Novell at the time. Okay. And I had just built, which sounds crazy in today's world, the very first directory of 1 billion objects. That was the project that I had just come from. And we even had a project at the time called Digital Me, which was like the first all-in-one identity management system, which was so before its time. But I just built, like, today there's a billion objects and everything. There had never, it was only 10 million objects prior to the project that we had
Really?
just finished
Wow.
on. So I
Wow.
had this huge stage and I jumped over, and it was a great team. When we did a couple acquisitions, we had raised capital, we were expanding really rapidly, and I got the ability to move up really quickly in that company. I came in to head up product management, and I very quickly pathwayed over into CMO, kind of CPO, chief product officer
Yep.
blend. And the people that I worked with, you couldn't have asked for a better team. And we were just talking about kind of like the family decisions I made. This was also early in my career, and I just had my first child, and actually went to my CEO and I'm like, hey, I want to work from home on Fridays. Like, that's what I want. This isn't even in hybrid land. Like, people were even thinking about that. And they were like, absolutely, Sid, that's just fine. You do that.
That's great. So you got good, experience and obviously it raised I mean, back then 58 million meant
It was a
something, right?
big deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a big deal. And then, so what was your biggest teaching moment to sort of push you forward out of that experience?
Kind of leaving that experience.
Yes.
So a couple of things that happened. I'm always about, like, how do I learn my skill set? So you can tell from my career, I didn't take a career path that was, I'm just going to stay in product management. I have had this insatiable appetite to learn new disciplines that I don't know, because I think it makes me better. So
Yeah.
I had taken down product management. I'd become a scrum master and moved an entire team to agile software development. I'd taken on the marketing function. I'd taken on the fundraising function. I went to my CEO and I'm like, on these next rounds we're doing, I want to be in that ecosystem. And he allowed me to kind of come into that group. And then I found myself, as I'd been there for a number of years, going, I need this new ecosystem. I want to jump to another opportunity that expands me outside of just what B2B is, and probably a little bit more into the consumer experience side. I've done all this product validation work, and I was always kind of starting stuff on the side, right?
Yeah.
I launched this thing called Rocky Mountain Voices before podcasts were even podcasts on iTunes. We started, Robert Scoble had just left Microsoft and partnered with John Furrier in Silicon Valley. So they had started this thing. We syndicated it. We launched it inside of Utah. We started creating all these podcasts. So I always had like these things, these networks that I was building. And I just knew I needed more experience than I was going to get just staying at the same place. And so I jumped.
So you had this failure during this time, right? This peer-to-peer file sharing system before
Sure.
drop. I love, it's so interesting talking to you because, like, we say innovation and we think it happened quickly. I mean, like, all these ideas failed before the real, the same idea
Absolutely.
actually happened. I mean, you even look at like Google, right? Like, they weren't the first search, but they were there at the right time. But you had this first failure from this peer-to-peer file sharing system. What did that feel like? Here you are, you took another jump, right? How did you get through it?
I think a couple of things have happened over the career. All of us, I don't know anyone, people don't sometimes talk about it, but everyone that we know who's built a career has failures. Things that you wanted to go one way, and either variables you controlled or someone else controlled blew it up. In this case, so we were building this, peer-to-peer file sharing thing. It was like pre-Dropbox. So you can think about like what Dropbox does. Now, we were before infrastructure was even ready to do that. And we also had been building it inside of a company that had a different business model. And so the failure was two parts. One is, it wasn't that the opportunity wasn't there, but it was actually the failure that we couldn't get the business model to work on the economics that was going to build something interesting enough. And you spend a couple of years of your life driving an innovation, believing in something so passionately, knowing that people could use it, but you can't take it to market. It's one of those moments where you basically just get to decide how you're going to handle it. Like you just said, you either say, this defines who I am and I can't handle it, or you say, I just learned a whole bunch of things. And the things that I learned, they're going to empower me to do better the next time. I won't repeat those same mistakes. I'll probably make some different ones, but I won't make those mistakes. And I think the way that you handle failure is actually the definition of who you are as a person, because they're the most stressful times of your life. When things don't go well inside of companies, it's hard, right? It puts pressure on everyone. People act differently. And when you fail, the way you handle other people, the way you recover through that, and then what you do next, I really think is the definition of what makes good people and the people that we should want to work with in the next round. the way we handled that failure, it ends up that a couple of those individuals I've since worked with 4 additional times in different companies, because not just of that experience, but how we managed the failure and the relationship through that.
And what makes you constantly pushing for more for that next company? Do you feel you're a type of person that, like, once you get it, you're not happy without trying to take on another challenge? I mean, it sounds like the pure entrepreneur in you just keeps popping up, right? And we're going to talk about is that what drew you to Brandless? Like, what's driving you?
Yeah. I think 2 things ultimately drive me, right? One is, so I usually wear a hat of opportunity cost. If I'm going to go spend my time doing this, like, what is the thing that it helps me achieve? And it's always a series of things. The coolest part about building companies is the impact that you get to make in people's lives and in community. Like the platform of companies that grow, you really do allow, not only you get this opportunity to employ people, but you actually get to help them on their journeys of life. Like, you develop these ecosystems, which at the end of the day, I think that's a big reason. That's kind of our job. All of us have talents, all of us are given opportunities, and if we're given those, it's also our job to help other people in that. So I'm very, very much driven by what I think I can do to help other people, and then I'm also driven by that the opportunity cost, or what I think that helps me develop, that I think in return also helps my family, and me just feel like I'm continuing to move forward and become a better person.
Well, I think you value yourself. I mean, just by getting to know you, I mean, to make those decisions, to know that you have more value to give, plus you value yourself and where you want to give it. I just feel that's tremendous. And that's why you keep, moving, shaking, and doing all these great things. So then how did Brandless attract you? And we're going to talk about this because this is big. Like, you raised $118 million. It's the largest female founder round ever, which shouldn't be, but we
do not want that bar to be there. Yes.
That's a whole nother topic, but the bottom line is you did it, and it's you. You should be proud. But what drew you to Brandless in the first place? Because obviously, it's a cool company. So we're going to learn more about that as well.
Yeah. So I'll give you like an answer by telling you a little bit about what my mindset was before that and jumping into this. Okay. So I had done, a couple of companies before this where I basically started the company from ground zero, brand new idea all the way up. And when you do a brand new startup, that is a tech startup, you're in it for like a 7 to 10 year horizon, right? And we all know what the percentages are of how those things, shake out. And it's a ton of work, which is a great thing. But I kind of had this realization of, I loved what we had built there. I loved how, all of the experiences of that, but I was ready to go to a place that I could really use my skill set for scaling. Like, I wanted the opportunity to say, this isn't just about ground up and then growing it, but I wanted to jump into something
more of a growth oriented company.
That's right. I wanted the growth up. I wanted something that was already had some validation behind it, already had some momentum that we could shape and accelerate. That's what really drew me to Brandless. In addition to the main backers behind Brandless are kind of a PE family office called Clark Capital. To be honest, I've actually never worked for a board that has been as great as these guys from that perspective. And I kind of had decided after, many of those ups and downs of businesses, I wanted a really interesting opportunity that could grow with really great people. And I was not willing to sacrifice really either of those. Like, I've had enough experience, and sometimes I haven't had the best partners, and I was never doing that again. And so for me, it was very much about people and very much about opportunity, because you only have so much time. Where are you going to go spend your time? It's got to be worth it. And if you're not in a place where it's worth spending your time because you don't like the people or you're too frustrated, you shouldn't be there. Go find something that lets you become the best person you can be. And so those were my drivers. And that's the group that I found at Brandless. And I think that's what's made it so fun to spend my time.
It's funny. I always say to people, and you can only say this when you're older, but you hope people listen, is most of your career is doing things to find out what you don't want, to finally get to where you, but it's fun, right? Because at the beginning, you think you want to do that. You need all that experience anyway. So like, just because you didn't want to do it, or it's not exactly where you think you want to be, you never lose anything. You just gain. But like, it's so funny. Like, you're still on the path of finding what you want, and you were emphatic about that. So let's talk about Brandless. It's sort of an interesting name in an era where everything's about brand, influencers, brand this, brand that. What's your message? What do you stand for? Which I know you stand for, and you have a great purpose. I've heard influencer, influence as a service, individuals as a platform. I love that. And I want to hear more about that. But like, what made you think going to a company that's brandless would work? Like, how, like in this world today?
Mhm. Well, so I should say two things. It's unapologetically a brand, right? That is true, right? We think about it as this idea of how do you brand less and live more? And I think that kind of echoes the things that I think about too. Like, where do you
Okay.
spend your time to live more? That's how we think about the brand in general. This idea that you can build products that are clean, that are better for you, and that focus more on what those outcomes and benefits are than the establishment of a brand. And then that leads into what you were just talking about is as we were thinking about this in this evolution that's really happening in consumer products, which is individuals are the platform, right? We've gone through this evolution where you have like retail and you have direct to consumer
So
and
can you
Amazon, and of course you
define
have
that? Because when you say that, it's like Facebook's for free, right? When you first went on Facebook, or, oh my God, look what I'm getting. It doesn't cost us any money, but yet we were the actual product
That's right.
of these platforms. Is that what you mean when you say we're the
Yes.
product? Okay.
I think there's two things I mean. So when I think about
Okay.
people as the platform, what I mean is because of everything that's happened with social and the way, but you think about how you get information, the things that you trust, the things that you want to advocate for. What I believe is everyone wants to be, in general, a force for good. They want to share the things that make their life fulfilling and that make others' lives fulfilling. And what you see is that in the product space, is that those people are becoming the platform because they're becoming the advocates for those things. When you think about the last things you purchased, chances are you saw a bunch of them either from your friends or someone referred them to you or someone talked about them on social and you're like, oh, I totally trust that person. I'm interested. I'm going to go check that out.
Yeah.
And because of that, that's how I think about people are the platform. People are already doing these things and they're looking for tools and ways to just do that, but that is owning the things that they care about. Life stages change what you advocate for. But at the end of the day, instead of thinking about it as, oh, there's this one destination, I'm going just to buy the products, us as individuals, we're kind of like Web3. We're distributed, we're personalized, we have individual needs, and we want tools that allow us to express that and share the things that make our lives better. And I think that's the evolution happening in product.
It's so funny. Whenever I get anything I like, some people want to run away from me. I want to share it, from books to could be a new golf club, anything that I love, I want to share. So I love this share and prosper. It's sort of like, Dr. Spock, peace and prosper. Now you got the share and prosper platform. I sort of like that.
Yes.
Maybe you could, we'll get Dr. Spock.
It's a good metaphor.
We can't anymore. That's a shame.
Yes.
Here. But and how is it works in that, like, so I love the product, right? There's no name. I went and looked and did some research on the website. It's presented very well and clean. I love your website. And then I could like something and be like, oh my God, this is great. And then I can send it to my friends. So how does the economics of the sharing and prospering work?
That's a good question. So over the last couple of years, we've also invested in a technology that we talk about as influence as a service, which this is the idea of not only do you hit a website, but then you think about, well, how do you share things or how do you participate in any economics of that? And what we've seen is that the ambassador and the affiliate worlds are colliding, and influencer, right? They're all coming together. And we live in a world where you have everyone's an influencer. You have nano influencers and you have mega influencers, but just like you said, you share, right? You're like, hey, everyone, like these are my favorite golf clubs. And so the system underneath that we've built not only lets you share and almost create this visual virtual store that has some AI underneath it based on whatever people seem to love that you share, it can actually optimize your the way that you talk about it. So how I'll give you an example in things like Instagram, right? The way that Instagram shows up is you can only ever put one link, but that link basically becomes your custom experience that you're sharing. So now imagine that it looks a little bit more like the things that you're sharing. It's like, oh, I love these golf clubs. Awesome. Well, these are the ones that Jonathan was just talking about when we were, doing this. And then if someone clicks on that, it actually has a whole attribution thing that knows that it originally came from you. Your Venmo's connected to the backend and it just pays you the commission fee for that sell.
So how do you get these original influencers, product lovers, when like, because we're all so attracted to brands. I was trying to understand, like, when
And
you
actually,
start.
and it doesn't have to just be Brandless's products on it. It's the entire, it's all, anyone can sit in that ecosystem of influence as a service, not just the Brandless products.
Oh, so if I had a brand myself, I could actually
You
put
could
it
totally,
on.
exactly.
Oh, that's okay. I didn't realize that. That's amazing. So how many would you say brands do you have outside the Brandless?
Yeah, so we kind of moved it from beta and we've been rolling up. I think there's a couple hundred now. So it's not like in the massive numbers yet, because we kind of product validation world, right?
Yeah.
We validated, we took it into our small groups. We've been making sure our MVP, our minimum viable product is ready. And then we've been pushing the scale on it. But it's really cool to see. We've also actually done a couple, the whole NIL deals that are happening with the NCAA.
Yes. Yes.
So, because one of the other things that I think is super interesting that we've done some work on in the platform is think about all these athletes, all the star athletes, they get the big deals, right? So they do that. There's all these other amazing athletes. I also think about this because my son's a college soccer player. One of my sons is. And so I think about these other, not famous quarterback people about how they participate. And so we've actually done some work in the ecosystem on the influence as a service where you take things like the student athletes, they talk about the things that they love, connect to Venmo, and then a portion of whatever sells there also goes to fund their programs at the schools.
Yeah.
So we have all these really interesting things because it's really about how do you advocate for the things you love, and then how do you help the people around you. So it doesn't have to be all brands. Other brands can sit in there. You can talk about them. They can be integrated into the storefront, and it's really, really simple.
And just as for my curiosity, like in Etsy or these other types of platforms, in a world of so many platforms, how do you compete? And like, what makes you even think you can do this? I mean, again, this is it's bold.
That's right. Because I think it's the thing that's I call it CPG 3, because I really do believe consumers transforming. So in the world that you're, in the comment that you just made around things like Etsy and Amazon, you're not replacing them. But those are places where people create shops and they sell that. What is changing is the distribution channel and the way that people share products. So you want wherever the product exists, consider an Etsy, consider an Amazon, Walmart.com, retail, Shopify, doesn't matter. But what you want is for it to be very easy for when people share something and talk about it, for that to be connected so that that's amplified. So this is really creating an abstraction layer of just layering up one layer from where their sites are.
If I had this when I was younger, I wouldn't be working with the amount of sharing I do. I'd be like literally sitting somewhere else right now. It's so
which is really cool to think about, right? The fact that you're already doing this, it's not disrupting that. It's not trying to change your way.
No,
It's
you're
just trying to
facilitating.
say, exactly. And why not be rewarded for that? Because you're already doing it. And people, I'd rather support you. You tell me about something, I'd rather support you than someone else.
So let's you talked a little bit about the hybrid work where we are today. What's your thoughts on innovation with being together or apart or separate or Zoom, being that, because personally, I think you can maintain companies, and listen, these large companies are all disparate companies. But what's your view on that? And how have you gotten through the post-COVID sort of, trying to get the right talent and making everyone, besides having a great company and a great, feeling like you're helping people, which I know you guys are, you say democratize access of good for you products, which I love, and then people can share them. So do you feel we're sort of where we are in the hybrid world or no?
I think we still have a ways to go. For me, I love the fact that the entire world is now thinking hybrid, because I think that it echoes what people need for the prioritization of their life, flexibility. We ran all these data research reports from the Women Tech Council side prior to the pandemic. The top of the stack for women, which make up about 50% of the workforce, has always been this term of flexibility. The problem is most people thought flexibility meant work less hours. It actually never meant work less hours. It meant, let me do the things that I need to. I don't want to have to tell someone I need to go pick my kid up at 3:00. I just need to go do that. And so I think the cool part of the evolution, and I think the place that we're seeing the mass amount of change still is this journey is requiring a very new type of leadership. It requires, you need empathetic leaders. You need leaders who understand the whole person, who are not just looking at butts and seats or time in the office or first car in, last car out. This is a very big shift for a large number of leadership individuals. And then I think we all would recognize that we somehow have to connect people. Because what happened with Zoom when everything was solely Zoom is conflict resolution was harder. We have the quiet quitting because it's really hard to know what people are doing or even what they're thinking. And it's easy to just click off the Zoom and, be frustrated at someone and walk away and then go look at a new opportunity. That is not a sustainable ecosystem. So we have to create these hybrid environments where we're intentional for when we bring people together. So we can have those ad hoc conversations, so we can build relationships, so that we can have that brainstorm session on the whiteboard that is innovation. We need those things. We need that connection as individuals, but we can balance that with these flexible environments that don't have to be as structured. For me, that's where we land. We try to be really intentional in time in the office. We have some people who are always remote, but they still fly in for certain things when it makes sense for them. And then we've also tried to really create a culture, even if people do come in the office. I call it not asking permission. It was a big change for a lot of the team. Like, you don't have to come ask me if you can leave the office. Actually, please do not come ask me if you can leave the office.
That makes sense, right?
I'm like, you need to go do that. You should just go do that. Just make sure, like, get your job done, be accountable for the outcome, be collaborative, be communicating. We're 100% good. You do what you need to do. Do not ask me permission.
I think the more freedom you're given, the less freedom you give yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I really do.
I
I feel that's just, most people's DNA. So interesting. And I think it's going to be a fun exercise over the next, I think we're just at the beginning, if you want my honest opinion.
I totally agree. Like, I think about it differently for my different groups of employees. I'm really big on helping the next generation get skill set. And I actually think the remote workplace is very difficult for them because they don't gain mentors, they don't learn processes, they don't learn all those things that develop them. So we have a big intern program. We actually do ask the interns to come in every day because I believe they don't get the acceleration we all benefited from if they don't have the connection with people and they can't see and you can't pull them into random projects because you can only connect with them on Zoom. So I totally agree. We're at the beginning. No one has this solved, but everything needs something slightly different in order to do that.
Innovate. We got to listen. If you look at medicine, right, we're going to be able to program the medicine you get per your DNA soon, right? And
oh, totally precision. Absolutely.
So like, there's not one size fits all for anything or anyone. So I think it's going to be a fun experiment. So let's talk about this Women's Tech Council. I think it's fantastic. How big is it? Tell us a little bit about it. What are you trying to accomplish? Is it all over the country, or is this just something in Utah?
So obviously we started and we're headquartered here in Silicon Slopes. We started about 14 years ago, really focused on the economic impact of women in tech. And we built programs around networking, mentoring, visibility, opportunity from high school to the boardroom. So there's roughly about 20,000 people in that community. We actually have a high school program called She Tech that's had 30,000 high school girls go through it. It's all about activating them into STEM careers. About 3,000 girls annually are in the program, from internships to explore days. There's 1,000 mentors, because the reason girls don't choose STEM careers, what they all say, because they're all learning coding and websites in their classes. They know no women in tech and they have no role models. So they cannot see who they can become. So until we help them see who they can become, they do not think about those jobs. So that program is super cool because it is really transforming. And that program runs not just based here. In the virtual years, it was all over the world. We have run some physical things here, but it also runs even in physical events in Idaho and Colorado and Arizona.
Oh, that's terrific.
So it's super fun program.
20,000, that's no joke.
Oh no, it's no joke. We're really good at creating sustainable programs. We really look at impact. We created a Women Tech Awards platform. It's had about 300 women recognized. It follows the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year award profile. The thing I love very most about this program is because women, if you're a CEO, you can get lots of recognition. But if you're a woman in tech, there are very few platforms that really shine a light on this amazing talent. So we wanted to shine a light on all of this cool talent. And the women that get recognized, within 6 months, they all have a new career opportunity, some acceleration inside of that ecosystem. And that's so powerful because it means that their visibility elevates, their impact elevates, the way they impact their families, community, companies, everything changes for them. So How do you accelerate other people? And then we do really cool things. We actually have an initiative right now that we call the One More. Came from my friend who's an Olympic medalist. And she was telling me about when she was working to get her on the Olympics, she decided she'd just do like one more squat or one more push-up in order to build her stamina. And over the course of time, it made this huge difference. And so we took the same metaphor and we said, that's what we should all be doing. How do you do just one more thing? What happens if you invite one more person to that networking event, or you give an opportunity that you don't have time for to one more person, or you put one more person in a board meeting that was never going to get an opportunity to be there so they get exposure. And so over the last couple of years, this has been a big initiative of ours. If you want to accelerate change, you want to change the number of women executives in tech from 5% to some other number, you have to accelerate opportunity for them faster than other people, faster than my career path. How do you do that? You open doors, you put people in those seats, you give them the mentorship, and you help them not just open the door, but you actually put them in the chair and you accelerate who they can become. That's what all of us are responsible to do. So at the core of the organization is that. How do you change dynamics? How do you change the number of women in tech? You do it by creating these programs and being very intentional in the expansion.
I love the one more thing. I remember when I was young, I started out as a real estate broker. My core business is real estate. That's what I do. And I always said to myself on that supposed last door, let me knock on one more. It's always the last door, right? And you're right. And I had a counterpart that gave me the confidence to keep knocking on that door. It was my mentor. And because of that person, I was able to, at least learn, fail, and know it wasn't so bad and go learn again. So, but I love that. And is that also just in your area, or is that also growing around the country? The one more.
We have people in the Women's Tech Council from all over the country. Physical events ended up centered here, but we do lots of virtual things, networking and involved. And most of the companies mostly or the organizations mostly sponsored by tech companies. And they're all the tech companies you would know, from the Adobes to the eBays to the Qualtrics, like all those companies are the backers behind it.
Well, you are an amazing person. You're just all about helping and doing and being and not overthinking. I love your personality. I want to thank you, but I also so Brandless. So it's brandless.com, right? How can people, you got Instagram sites? Is it all Brandless?
Exactly. Yep. You go to Brandless Life on Instagram. We're even on LinkedIn. We've got a Facebook group. We've got brandless.com. One of the cool things we're doing at Brandless too is we're acquiring mission-driven, like-minded companies and bringing them into that ecosystem so that people can have more access to better for you products. So you start to see a bunch of those cool things that are coming from us this next year.
So would that be if I had a product, right, and I was sharing it on your platform, you're almost incubating, right? You could see how it's doing, and then you would maybe acquire them to help them amplify, I guess, faster, right?
Yeah, totally. Typically, the companies that are coming in are companies that have that actually have established or validated their product, and people love it. So then we're going to bring them in, and to your point, exactly that, help amplify them and accelerate them. We all want better for you stuff.
Like a virtual accelerator program. I love that, right? I mean, you get to see it real time. That's smart, very smart. All right. And then how about the Women Tech Council? Is there websites or anything?
It is. Yep. You can go to womentechcouncil.org. And we also have an Instagram following, and the She Tech program, which is the high school program. Like, it is also a really great place to meet, just seriously, these amazing young women who are coming into the pipeline.
I love that.
So there's so many ways to get involved, right, in the things that we're passionate about. And that's what we're all about. How do we give ways to make everything better?
Well, it's making me excited. I have 2 daughters. I'm going to go tell them about it.
Oh, totally. Yes.
Yeah, just to learn about it, right? And to get, one's graduating, one graduated. But we'll see. So thanks so much. This has been so much fun. I know everyone's going to love this and enjoy this.
Thanks for having me. I love the conversations, and you're just really great and insightful about the things that I think move people forward and highlighting the great things people are doing. So thank you.
Thank you.